Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, you know how I feel with my guests. I know that each one of them are presenting themselves to us here with several what I deem very expensive commodities. The first is their time. David, I thank you for your time because I know how precious it is and that you are here to spend some of that with us. The second is your journey. Your journey houses your wisdom, your enlightenment, your pain, all of your victories and defeats. And so I want to thank you so much for coming. And it is my hope that I create a space by which you can be honest with yourself and with us so that we can learn and become the best human spirits possible while we occupy this space. Thank you so much, David, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is an honor, sir. Talk to us about some of the things that you have created currently or given birth to, because I tell people a creator, one of the things about the creator that we hate is complacency. And once we are awake, we have to keep moving. We don't know what that word is, and we do not, it's not part of our spirit or part of our lexicon, if you will. Talk to us about those things that you have created so far.
Well, most recently, I created a book called Pictures of Your Soul. And when people think of the soul, they don't think they can answer questions about what the soul is and how the spiritual entity stays within a physical body. And is there an anatomy of the soul that we have to learn? And I was learning a book called Tanya, which actually goes through a lot of that description. And in order to understand it, I had to draw a lot of pictures. Mm-hmm. So I found myself drawing pictures of the soul. And this book really goes through a series of questions that people normally would have or think they couldn't answer, and goes through answering each one of them. And I found an amazing photographer who lives right next to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and spent like tens of thousands of pictures on people who are on fire in prayer. They're just like glowing. And so those are also woven through the book. So you actually feel this sense of the soul as being very, very alive visually. I'm a musician. So I have 2 albums out, and one is called Journey to the Real You, which I think is very thematic with your show. And there's a book that goes with that called A Book About You, and it's all about helping people discover who they are, what's unique about them, what strengths and weaknesses come with that type of personality, and helping them make choices in life. Because, there's a lot of things that we know that are right for us, but it's just scary to make that step into new territory. So I deal with that process of not only knowing who you are, but actualizing it as well. As a business, I'm an inventor. So I have some technology I sold about 20 years ago, which was an immersive video technology that lets you be on stage with various characters. This is long before Wii and various Xbox technology. So I sold it in time to not have to face the competition. And then I invented another product, which is an insole that you step into, and it immediately takes the shape of your foot. So I'm presently negotiating with some big shoe companies to try to get them to license it and integrate them into their shoes. Half my day, I study Torah. I study Judaism, the Talmudic studies and mystical studies, Kabbalistic studies. I'm at a stage of my life where I had spent so many years teaching people, beginners, people who come from a non-religious background, teaching them the basics of Judaism and spirituality. And there's a certain balance in life that I've established where I have to have a certain amount of input and a certain amount of output. And so I've designed my life now around that balance. And thank God I live in Israel, and I feel every breath I take here is a breath of spiritual air and enlightenment in itself.
I'm excited about this conversation. There's so much you stated there, and I want to talk to you about how did you get to where you are. We go back, usually it's our custom here, David, is to investigate the journey. Talk to us about your family upbringing. How was that? That is one of the first places that we as humans are placed into. And based on our family, their perception of the world, they then began to deposit information into us. So talk to us about your family, your upbringing from that point of view.
Okay, I grew up in Toronto, and was my parents were very cultured people who encouraged creativity in the home very much. I studied music. Then I was encouraged to be involved in sports and competitive. There's always been a competitive side of me that strived to be the best that I could in whatever field I was in. And that was part of the selective process of deciding what to do, because I wanted to do well at it. And so there was a certain weaving in and out of different things that I was faced with. I was into painting for a while. And I couldn't fit into the normal school system. Thank God I'm ADHD, so I have a lot of creativity, but it doesn't help too much in the classroom. So I went to what's called a free school. A free school is by the Board of Education. They allow you to design your own curriculum, and then they approve that, and you get your credits for that. And that was all day Friday was just art. It was a very, very free flowing kind of environment, but it encouraged a certain apathy at the same time, because it was out of touch with the regular responsibilities of certain skills to develop academically. So it was I miss out on a certain amount of the structure. But when I was 16 years old, I became so immersed in the music composition side of it. And what I did was I wrote a bunch of songs, and with a friend of mine who's the lyricist, and we recorded demos and went out to LA and became friends with a number of very big people in the music industry. And we got a staff music writing job with A&M Records, which doesn't exist anymore. But
no anymore.
Not anymore. But that was exciting for us. And then we recorded an album with a guy from Toronto who was originally from Jamaica. He grew up with Bob Marley, and he had a sort of Earth, Wind, and Fire kind of sound to him. And
what instrument you play, David? Sorry to interrupt. What instrument
I play piano. I play piano. Okay.
Sweet.
And I sing. And but my as you'll see, my major in college was music composition. And composition is putting a lot of pieces together and finding a way for them to flow. So being an inventor and, doing like 3 puzzles at a time on the floor as a little kid was very similar type of thing, wanting to try to make things fit into a way that flows properly. So the kind of music composition I used to do was much more like that. I'll explain to you how that's changed over time. But when I was 18 years old, I had a fascinating realization. Thank God, not through the type of pain that you described before, but there was an enlightenment that took place. What happened was when I was 18, I was running so fast to be successful in the music industry. I thought, like, once you reach 20, you're over the hill. And I wanted to make it big in the business. And what happened was the sound of this album that we did sounded a little bit too Canadian. It was too clean. Like if you go to Canada, if you get on a subway, there's no graffiti there. It's like it's missing the soul. It's like So we went to LA to record some of the songs, and there was this arranger named Gene Page, who's passed away now, but he had won numerous Grammy Awards for a number of albums that he produced and arranged. And we hired him to do our album. And he got the greatest musicians in LA, really incredible musicians. And I was 18, and he was quite intrigued by this 18-year-old, recording this album with him. And he was nominated for a Grammy and couldn't go. So he asked me if I would accept his award on his behalf.
Wow.
And on one hand, I was so excited, but on the other hand, I was scared out of my mind because I was imagining going up in front of thousands of people in person and millions of people watching on television. And I just kept envisioning myself going up there and saying, I want to thank you on behalf of, and forgetting his name or something really crazy like that.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I was in the limousine that he got for me, and a tuxedo, and I was heading down the highway, and this girl I met out there gave me something to relax me a little bit, and my feet were like sort of flying by then, and I'm heading down the highway, and I think I joked that's like when I became religious, because I prayed to God that he wouldn't win, and thank God listened to me, and he didn't win, but because I got nominated, I was one of the, actually there you have to sort of believe that it's you getting nominated, because then you can rub shoulders with all these big players. So yeah. I had a VIP pass into this party afterwards, where in a big hotel, each ballroom had a different theme. The Count Basie's orchestra was playing in one. Yeah. This was the disco era. So of the late 70s, and they had a big disco room, and in one room they had a big spread of food and television showing all over the room of the Grammys, so that you can watch your artists perform again and again and again, and just because it meant so much to these people. Yeah, now, I came from somewhat of a snobby jazz background. I grew up on Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, and the Weather Report, and all that. Just sort of jazz fusion. Yeah. And I'm looking around, and I saw somebody who was my idol. He was like exactly what I wanted to be. Somebody who did not sacrifice any artistic integrity, and yet was successful in the pop market. Like, that's a really tough thing to do. Yeah. And there was the man who was the ultimate example of that. And I looked at him, and he looked totally depressed. He was just sitting there smoking a joint with Chuck Mangione, was a very popular trumpet player at the time. Yeah. And he looked depressed. And I said, whoa, this is what I'm running after. And he doesn't look happy. Yeah. And it looks like I need to figure out how to be happy, and then use my music as an expression of that inner happiness. Yes. And I just stopped my life. I was no longer running at 100 miles an hour to be successful. I was much more concerned about living the life of David Green, like not living the life of these people that I was chasing after.
What a gift, that led me David. Excuse me? What a gift that was, being there and had the opportunity to be there. Isn't it wonderful how they call it synchronicity, if you will? But I think it's just a beautiful thing how life has a way of ushering us into the path that we need to be in order. Because here you are chasing this thing, and you're watching at this person going, wait a minute. And at that space, you got this major life-changing revelation, just from an opportunity to go present, quote unquote, or receive something, and you had this great big life epiphany going, wait a minute.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the Hasidic masters say that there are various points in our lives where we have a certain, what's called Ruach HaKodesh, a divine revelation. And we have them all the time, but we're not awake enough to hear them. Yeah. And there was a time when there were thousands of prophets, even though we only read about a few, there were thousands of them that used to be able to look at a person and look at their soul and tell them who they are and what their purpose is in this world. And we lost that prophecy, but what they used to look at is still there, which means within us is that awareness deep down inside of who we are and what we're here to achieve. Yeah. And we, every so often, we're privileged to get a glimpse of what that is. Now, a person should really dig down deep, an active process of removing the distractions of this world and of our emotional confusion, to hear that inner voice and therefore we don't need to go to someone else to find out what that is. We have it inside of us. And there are certain times where there's a message that's in front of you that opens up that door where you can vividly see what that is. And so for me, I didn't vividly know how to translate it. I just saw that there was a major change that I had to make. And I was sort of scared, like, well, what is it? What am I supposed to do next?
Yeah.
And I decided, you know what? I haven't been in a real school since I was like in grade 7. Maybe what I should just do is go to college and be a normal guy, not be running after Hollywood. And so I went to Bloomington, Indiana, which has a very good music school. And I went through the process of music school. And I really found it somewhat depressing. I found it lonely. I found myself in a place where all these people wanted to be that idol I had who was in LA. They wanted to be that. Yeah. And so everyone's running after Hollywood again. And I knew that wasn't right for me. And I knew it wasn't right for them either. It was sort of so alienating. And then I picked myself up and I went to Israel because there were certain hypocrisies in my religious identity, in that certain places I cared about it and certain places I didn't care about it. And I decided that I wanted to sort that out and either embrace my religious background or reject it, because either it's true or it's not true. Yeah. So I went to Israel, and the first thing that happened was my music began to blossom. I was away from this whole artsy culture, and I was hearing my own inner voice. And I believe that when you're in the land of Israel, it's like an amplifier to the soul. You can hear your soul much higher. And when I came here, I had a jazz band. I used to perform every Saturday night at the Tomb of David. Right next there was a hall. And I started getting a lot of gigs playing for like writing music for various stories and religious teachings, and the purity in which my music started to have was so much more important to me than the creativity of the music that I was being demanded to create in college and in the industry. And that was such a big transformation for me. And that's during a process of searching about who I am and what I am. What am I, a soul? What does it mean to be a soul? Is there a God? How do you know if there is a God? And I was there. A number of guys showed up at the same time. That one guy who was in the same class with me there had just done a thesis that there is no God. That was his thesis. And he came to save his brother from being brainwashed in what we call a yeshiva. So it was great because I had all the arguments to prove that it wasn't true. And I watched them knock down one at a time, one argument at a time. And it was a amazing process for me. And it took a while. But over time I became religious. And my vision of what to do with my life changed, and I became a giver of teaching, and I became a rabbi, and I continued to do my music as a form of communication of something that I thought was very meaningful. And then became an author. And I don't believe that you choose a career and have to be that for the rest of your life. I believe you take a personality, and that personality can express itself in many ways at the same time. Especially if you're ADHD.
I've been accused of the same, man. I have a good friend of mine, and all of our friends tell us that we are classic because of our attention span. But I find myself, it's really interesting what I can do, David. I can read several books, listen to things all at the same time, and process it clearly. And I had a friend of mine said to me, "That's not possible." And while I was doing all of these things at one point in time, and so I said to them, "Ask me anything, just pull from wherever you want to," which where I was. And so they went through a couple of books that I was reading here, and asked me stuff while I'm reading this book. I'm listening to this and whatever. And for me, I am able to do that. I don't know why, but I am able to do it. Where I can separate them. I'm also a musician. So my ear is trained to, I guess, to hear different things and pick up different things and so forth. But I don't know what it is. And I can't explain it, but that's what it is. And people say because
Well, you're very blessed. Not only in what you described just now, but within that, the ability to remember what you read a number of books back. I have a very hard time with that, and it's something in my studies when I do Talmudic studies. It's very important to remember what you learned, 3 weeks ago, because a debate to do with that is coming up, and you have to remember what you learned back then in order to understand what you're learning now. It's a very, very challenging thing for me. So you should very much appreciate that you have that, and I think it's a natural thing. I know people learn how to memorize things better and reading comprehension skills, but I have friends who I've studied with where they remember everything they learn, and it's so obviously a gift, and that's one of the challenges I have. I should say thank God, because that's led me to other things,
Yeah,
I think as a jazz musician, especially, the reason why I probably got involved in improvisational jazz is because reading music and memorizing music was very, very hard for me. So I went into the realm of playing music and just expressing it in, spontaneously.
Talk to us about that transition, because it is you mentioned it before, moving from one space to another, when you had this encounter with your quote unquote idol, and you realize that that's not where it is. And as you began to shift, because that place that you're shifting to now is an uncertainty. You are not, you talked about going to school, and here you are. Once you made your decision to move to Israel, and things slowly began to come into place with the music. How did you, David, you mentioned that you started studying. How did you, with all of this renaissanceness happening around you and your study and all of this thing, did it started to affect you as an individual, in the sense where it began to change your perception? You talked about your friend who was an atheist, and having all of this conversation happening. How did it begin to those seeds of life and the movement of things began to change this young man in his being? How did that begin to affect you?
That's a great question. Before I went to Israel, I was much more of an introvert. And when I went and started learning with other people at the same time, I seemed to blossom. I found myself just being free to just express myself and let the guard down and just be who I am. And discover who I am. And I found myself making really good quality friends, because we had those late night discussions about philosophical issues. We had one of the things I did was there's a Hasidic sect that the rabbi would speak at night, and then after that, like around 11, 12 o'clock at night, a few hundred people would go into this dark room, which was the dining hall with the lights off, and they would sing music that was atonal, all in unison. And it was like nine 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 nine, like these beautiful songs that were atonal. Like, and I thought Schoenberg was ahead of his time. These were absolutely awesome melodies, and I said, like, whoa, like, where am I? Like, it just took me completely out of the whole space of my life and assumptions, and it made me let go of so much of my past and allow myself to discover where I was at the time. And I felt myself much, much happier just as a person, just sharing with people. Time had a different type of scale to it. I was living in the moment so much more. And I was breathing in air that was much more real,
Yeah.
going places, discovering new people that I probably wouldn't have spent time with if I wasn't in an environment of truth seeking.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because when you're within a group of people who are truth seeking, it helps bring that out even more. And so
Mm-hmm.
therefore I felt that was an amazing, amazing time in my life where I feel that's probably the happiest time, or at least, I thank God I've had many other times that I've been happy. I also have struggled with depression and pain of, they say is a chemical depression, but I've gone through various painful times, but that was such an amazing time of joy in my life, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm deep down inside, I'm a truth seeker.
Yeah.
Conversations I'd have with friends in college always felt superficial unless we started to analyze what life is about, and different types of personalities and things. And here I was with a whole group of people who were very much immersed in that same type of truth-seeking process, and therefore every conversation was coming from such a deep, fulfilling place
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
had to have a transformation on me. It had to be a happier life, because I was within that realm of who I really was and being
Yeah.
encouraged to be so.
As you're talking about this, David, you'd mentioned that you had some struggles, and we all have those struggles as part of this human experience that I talked about as individuals being dropped into this spiritual being deposited into this house that is basically keeping us legally here on this planet. And we all experience different types of shift in emotions. Talk to us about the depression aspect of your life. How did you learn to? And I'm sure it is a continued walk. But how did you learn how to manage it, David? How did you learn how to not let it be your master per se, versus you being able to manage it and to keep it in check, if you will, for lack of a better word?
So at first, it was being experienced on a very symptomatic level, where I just suffered and just didn't know why I was suffering, and I was sort of lost in it. And then over time, I stepped back and said to myself, I'm not running the show. God's running the show. And he put me through this. And some people suffer from various physical diseases, and some people suffer from all kinds of, mental diseases. I suffered from an anxiety and some depression, and there's a reason for it. And the deeper I got into my studies, the more I was able to say, you know what, this is a gift.
Yeah.
Even though it's painful, it's a gift. Childbirth is a gift, and childbirth is very painful. And that I'm supposed to take a change in my life and prioritize what truly is meaningful. And within the realm of a very dark space, if you light a candle, that candle can light up the whole space. And so I found myself discovering various sparks that enlightened that dark period. A lot of it had to do with the relationship with my wife, who I love dearly, and was with me through all that and helped me. Friends that were, one of my closest friends is a psychiatrist who helped me a lot in coping with that. And it went in phases. The first time it was about a year. And then I was treated and I was doing fine. And then there was a terrorist attack that took place here in Israel, and I had gone off my medication. That was a very bad choice. And the terrorist attack, I kept watching the visualizations of it, of blood all over this yeshiva. And a yeshiva is a place where I studied as well, one of these types of schools of Jewish thought. And seeing blood all over the place. There were, I think, 8 boys that were killed
Wow.
by someone who was a man. He had been a janitor there, and he did a suicide attack on there, just running through with a machine gun, killing people. And it just that zapped me back into a very depressed state that was much worse than I had before. And suddenly the smell of a flower was a gold mine.
Wow.
The precious things that are naturally around us. I was no longer a seeker of dramatic things in my life. I didn't have to make it in Hollywood, nor did I have to make it in any other field or any other social environment, because what I had to do was survive the pain and appreciate the things that were around me to appreciate. So my relationships with my kids, my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, and my relationship with myself all became much more the focus of my life. And that, to me, was an enlightenment that would not have happened had I just had a jolly old life going, smoothly with a paved road all the way. So I think your question's a very, very profound one of, yes, within the struggle, there's so much to learn and so much to enjoy through different senses of, we say we have 5 senses. We have more than 5 senses.
I believe so. I think the ones that we are known, the 5, those are the natural one, but I believe they're much deeper senses. Discernment is a sense. As you said, the prophets were able to discern someone's soul, the deepness of it, where they need to go, the path. And that's a tremendous art that has been lost. I know I actually wrote, I bought a book several years ago that I started to study and started to read, and I've been reading it really slow. The Sefer Yetzirah. I love that book.
Sefer Yetzirah.
Yeah. And I've been reading that and just slowly grabbing it and putting it together. That's something I bought that I did not want to rush. I didn't want to read, you know what I mean?
Don't rush.
Read. I want something. It's a book about the meditation of the human spirit and at a deeper level. So that's what I'm in it to get that revelation and that meat of it. And as
you may find it helpful. There's an author who passed away at a young age named Aryeh Kaplan, and he explains the Sefer Yetzirah and other great writings. Sefer Yetzirah actually goes back to Abraham. It's one of those classic books that describe the creation of the world and what a person is, and it's a fascinating study. So it's not something to take quickly. Go slowly and enjoy every step. But you should know that it's very abstract, and therefore commentaries on it would be helpful. So someone like Aryeh Kaplan. Oh, good, good. That's very, very important.
You can get lost if you don't have those other tools, because it's something that has really fascinated me, David. I read a lot. I do another podcast, and I grab a lot of information from all of the different books that are out there, different from the Bible, to get a better picture as to what was happening around that time. I look at the Book of Yasher and all the other books that are out there, that I love to study. But here you are, you're growing as this man. You're learning. You mentioned meditation, and I do meditation because I find it very effective in helping me to become knowledgeable about me. And from that space, I am able to get in touch and have my relationship with my God. I do a lot of meditation and focus so that when I come out from that space, I learn how to love. I learn all of that stuff because I tell people the primary principle by which the human spirit should be governed is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. And from my study, I told him, I said, that's his spirit, soul, and body. That encompasses the entire individual. And you have a revelation about the soul. And I wanted to talk to you about that because it's very important. A lot of people don't have that revelation, David. And it's a vital part of their existence that we need to learn about. So talk to us. You gravitated as you moved towards your books and so forth. How was that a natural progression that you moved from the music to the book? How did that come about? And why that one for your first book, number one? Then we'll talk about the other projects that you have.
When studying in yeshiva, when I was the more I got into it, the more it became well, what is my relationship like with God? What is my soul longing for? What does God want from my soul? So the soul, like you said, the prayer, we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, God is one. What does that mean, God is one? So many things that I was doing in my Jewish practice have to do with what is the soul. Like it's involving the soul. But a lot of people, they do rituals without taking the time out to really explore what the underlying basis is for what we're doing. When somebody grows up non-religious, there's a certain advantage that we have in that we're exploring religion from a point of view as an adult, which is very different than being brought up and being taught how to do everything. And it becomes sort of by rote, you do it.
Yeah.
And I teach a lot of people like that to see what they're doing from scratch. See it as an adult. You can put on a shirt as a kid, or we say it tzitzis, the fringes that we wear on a garment. You can put on as a 5-year-old kid, and they maybe fit perfectly, and they're 100% kosher. They're fine. But when you get older and your body gets bigger, then those same ones don't fit anymore because they're too small. They have to cover the majority of your body, of your upper body. So same thing with your relationship with God. Yeah, as a little kid, you can learn all kinds of things that are true, but they're not refined, they're not mature, they're not developed like as an adult. And therefore, as an adult looking into spirituality, it's very natural to ask, almost like somebody looking into a business. They're going to ask all the questions about, like, where is this going to be in 5 years from now? Now, where's your management? Well, how's the structure of the business? And, we analyze the things we know we should analyze. But a lot of people don't spend the time to analyze the most basic questions about who we are and what we are. But that was a very natural and central part of my development. And my music and my books are really focused on those questions. That's what I love to be able to give over in a very natural way. But one of the things that concerned me, that when I was becoming religious, that because so many people are doing the same thing in terms from a religious standpoint, it looks like everybody's supposed to be the same. And as I started learning more Hasidic masters' works, I found that it's absolutely the opposite. That just like physically, medically, we're supposed to eat the right things, that everybody's supposed to eat what's proper for them. If I go to an eye doctor, whether my eyes are brown or someone else's are blue, the same eye doctor can treat them because there's a certain set of commonality that we all share. But then when you step beyond that, there's also a realm of individuality. So although, yes, we are all keeping the same commandments, it doesn't mean that we're all the same. And that's where I started to discover more that I have a particular spiritual purpose in this world that is unique. Even though my friend and I both will eat kosher food, I can be a very different person from them. So we're both breathing the same air, but we're very, very different people. And that became, perhaps from my artistic background, that uniqueness was an important part of who I was. And when I started finding how much that is a part of my Jewish background, of my Jewish tradition, it was very relieving to be able to know that my pursuit of creativity was something that God wanted from me, as opposed to putting it aside now for a spiritual journey. No, they're one
Yeah.
and the same.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is you. And that's what I tell people, David, because people, a lot of them, and I guess maybe it's their programming, that they feel they have to put it away. And I look at that and I said, no, it is who you are. All of it is all inclusive of you. There's the importance, as you mentioned, the importance of the individual person and the importance of I always put it this way, the independence and the interdependence. There is both, but the independent is even more so important, because as you get to learn about your independentness and the little nuances about you, spirit, soul, and body, you will then see how you fit into the interdependent part of the existences of one another. But you have to go through that interdependent where you got to know who you are in every level. If you're a musician and all those things put together.
It's interesting, though, maybe you've covered this in Sefer Yetzirah, but there's a dichotomy that we resolve in our observance, and that is that, as you said, God is one, the world is one. There's a unity that is all part of this whole big spiritual life that we live. But ultimately, what I want to do is be a servant of God.
Yeah.
I want to do what he wants. So that sounds like I'm giving myself up to do what he wants. But really, if he wants me to be who I am. And therefore, the more I give myself up, the more I actually am actualizing who I am. So I should never fear the abandonment of who I really am, but I should at the same time surrender myself to his will, because by doing so, I'm actually fulfilling what is deep down my ultimate real purpose. Yeah. So my creativity should always fit into that, wanting to do that purpose of serving him, because that's not a departure from me. That is an essential part of who I really am. In my second book, that I discuss that much more. My second book, the cover of the book, which is called Pictures of Your Soul, is a picture of a selfie, a person taking a selfie on an iPhone, but instead of seeing their face in the screen, they see a candle, and that's because it says in Mishlei, in the writings, that that the soul of man is the candle of God.
Candle of the Lord, yeah.
Right. So I felt that was suitable for Pictures of Your Soul, to have the candle representing the soul. And in there, I discuss the anatomy of the soul, 5 levels of the soul. It says in the Torah that God breathed life into man. And it's interesting that the sound of breathing is the same sound that the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet makes, which is ha. That's a hey, the letter hey, which is the 5th letter. And 5 is also the soul, because there's 5 levels of the soul. So when God breathed life into man, he breathed in the letter hey through the breathing sound. He breathed in the 5 levels of the soul. And so each level of the soul has its own properties. For example, the lowest level of the soul, which is called nefesh, rests within us in its connection to the blood. It says many times in the Bible that dam hu nefesh, that the blood is the soul. So that, for example, if there's blood spilled there, its blood is the soul. That represents the life of a person, but it represents the life of the person and which is connected more to what's called the animal soul that we have within us. Animals also have souls, but it's a lower level soul, which is an animal soul. We have a soul that is connected to our breathing. So that's why, and to the blood, which is why if you were to try to picture your soul within you, it flows all the way up and down your body, everywhere the blood flows. You feel that's the closest physical representation we have to that spiritual entity, is the thing that it's connected to the most. And it's connected to the highest level of the blood. The blood also has 5 levels. And the highest level of the blood is connected to the lowest level of the soul. And so therefore it's almost like an evaporated steam blood level.
Yeah.
And so when I meditate, and what mindfulness really is focusing on, is the nefesh. It's becoming aware of every part of your body. It's very, very much in tune with breathing. And you move your way up the body and become aware of it all, and become just, living in the here and now and experiencing yourself as a living being. Yeah. But then the next level is called ruach. And that's something which is related to the heart, but it's a place it's scarier to go into in a meditation. It's a place of darkness, of emptiness. And to travel through emptiness is a very, very spiritual place to be. And what we try to do is not just go there and then come back out and deal with the world. What we try to do is go there and carry with us that awareness in the world, as opposed to depart from it. And so there's a Talmudic statement that tells us that a Torah scroll, a biblical scroll, we read it from a scroll as opposed to from a book with it. We have an obligation to read 3 times a week from a Torah scroll, which has letters, and each letter has meaning, and the placement of the letter has very strict laws. So the letters are very, very holy. But our sages teach us that the space around the letters, the negative space, so to speak, is even holier than the letters themselves. And that's the empty spaces as well. So when we go up into the ruach level of the meditation, we're now between the letters. We're in that space which has a holier dynamic to it. And my second album that I put out is called Empty Spaces. And I would play it for you now, but it's start breathe into the moment, right? Yeah. It's all a process of going from the nefesh level to the wonders of your soul, which is finally I get into the ruach level of the soul. And that's the title song, is all about this meditative process of becoming aware of the soul. So that process where you asked, like, how I became more aware of this became a process of learning, of studying from the ancient texts, and more contemporary, of teaching us how to be in touch with that. And the more you learn about it, then the more you look for that which you've learned. If someone tells you that you have something inside of you, then now you can search for something. I like to use an example of and I teach classes a lot to do with self-esteem and the issues because I like to show what Judaism says about things that people are struggling with. I speak to the pain of people, but I use the Torah as my basis for what I'm teaching. And one of the things I teach a lot is that if you were to go out and dig for a gold mine, but no one ever told you where to dig, it could be a very frustrating experience because you have no reason to think it's there. Yeah. But if someone told you, I promise you, there's a gold mine, but you're going to have to dig down under this place to find it. It's, it could be 6 feet, 12 feet, but it's down there. So then as soon as you begin digging, you're already in a process of discovering that treasure which is in you. And so the precious soul is untouchable. The value is it's immeasurable. It says in the Tanya, it says that it is like a piece of God. It's a godly spark that's in you. And so if a person's feeling very low and depressed or unaccomplished or unappreciated, and they're suffering from low self-esteem, so if they dig knowing that there is this treasure in them and that nobody can possibly change that, then there is an absolute basis for self-esteem, not a relative one.
Yes.
There was a teaching I took that I disagreed with. I found online. A psychologist said, he said, "Who wants this $20 bill?" Right? And everybody said, "I want the $20 bill." And then he crinkled up the $20 bill and he says, "Who wants it now?" And of course, everyone said, "I want it now as well." And then he stepped on it and crinkled it up more. And who wants it now? Of course, everyone wants it now. So he says, I have just proven to you a very important point, that no matter how much people step on you and they crinkle you up and try to, destroy you, you should always know that you are beautiful in the eyes of those who love you.
Yeah.
Which sounds very nice and very warm. But what if somebody doesn't have anyone who loves them? Does that mean they have no right to love themselves?
Yeah.
So we have to have a true basis of self-esteem. And so when a person knows of the beauty of their soul, that it's there no matter what, even if they make mistakes in life, and even if it seems like other people don't love them, they have to know that deep inside is this incredible soul that if I dig down to the gold mine, I'm going to discover it. It's really, really there.
Yeah.
So then that's a completely different plane of life, because now you're living knowing your value, even if I don't feel it today, but it's there anyway.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Everyone that has been listening to David and I have this conversation, I want you to get into his space, buy his books, because within those books house much wisdom as you're listening and hearing the music. Get into all of those things, and so that he can guide you to understand the value that you are. It is very important to understand that, because as he just stated, you have to know that, even if someone else around you doesn't express that. But once you know the greatness within you, I believe that is the place that you gain wisdom, understanding. And from there, that position, you can then look at others and be that one for that other person that doesn't have someone, but you saw the value that is in you, that you're able to change their life based on your revelation of who you are. And so I want you guys get everything that you can possibly get. I'm going to purchase a couple myself, because I'm very fascinated in getting to know some of your writings and your insight, David. And I'm going to pick up a few myself. So talk to us, David, as you are in doing the things that you've gained, or the knowledge that you have gained, and your teaching and all of those things. You're at a place in your life now. Where is that place? And what is the vision that you have for David now, at this age, at this time, at this space? What is it that you have that is stirring within your being, that you think it is the next phase of your personal growth?
Well, first of all, I'm a father of 8 kids and 16 grandchildren.
That's a big family.
Yeah. And just one daughter lives in America, but the rest of my kids live here. I have a 20-year-old who's getting married in a few weeks. So my family has become very much a part of my life. I study Torah with my son-in-law as well. And that's my son-in-law. We study a lot of the more mystical ideas together. I very much, I've done enough regular teaching. I taught for 5 years at a girls' school here in Jerusalem, where people come with no background. But I've moved now beyond that into a place where I want to reach out to the world as a whole more with wisdom. And the books, those 2 books, a book about you and Pictures of Your Soul, are an expression of that. I didn't tell you about my film background, but I won the Cannes Film Festival.
Wow.
I did a movie with Martin Short that Disney actually distributed. So I have background in film So I've been using my film production also as part of my expression to share these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that my having suffered from depression, especially where there was some trace of bipolar 2,
Mm-hmm.
I have to also put the brakes on and make sure
Yeah.
that I'm not throwing myself back into Hollywood.
Yeah.
So my vision is not so much of a grandiose vision of trying to accomplish something that everybody is going to clap at me for, that everyone's going to
Mm-hmm.
praise me for, but rather it's a vision of being honest with who I am, what's the next stage of my spiritual development, which has a lot to do with my studies, being true to myself with what I understand and what I don't understand, connecting myself to people who are inspirational for that stage of development, and stop running so fast in a different direction, because that's
Yeah.
my tendency that we saw right from the beginning of our discussion, and living a life of balance and recognizing that I'm now in my early 60s, and there's each phase of life has a different advantage to it.
Mm-hmm.
We say that 60s is chachma. It's a level of the soul that has to do with wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And in this phase of life, I don't want to live the life of my 40s or my 20s. I
Yeah.
want to live the life of my 60s, which is a
Yeah.
God-given time that I'm blessed with. That actually, when you live to 60, once you hit 60, there's a certain phase that you're supposed to move into of a certain type of awareness that you try to hold up that awareness and look at the world through that higher level of awareness. So I don't like to define the next phase of my life in such a
Mm-hmm.
proactive way. I think of it more of a consciousness stage that I'm trying to uphold and develop. And along with that comes the books and the music and the creative part, but they're all part of a more serene kind of outlook in life, as opposed to I'm going to make a revolution, I'm
Yeah.
going to change the world. I have to change myself, the people around me, in my family. I have to reach out to my community, and then from there reach out to the world, but much more in a step-by-step process, as opposed to I gotta get on television and, like be on the talk shows and,
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I am now in my 60s. This year I'm going to be 61. And my granddaughter keeps reminding me I have 5 sons, and I have 4 granddaughters. I had all sons and I have all granddaughters. So it's really, really interesting. But they are a different breed. They own me. Just one smile, and Papa, that word just makes me melt, and I lose it. I can't seem to hold it. I laugh and they joke with me anyway, but I understand exactly what you're talking about and how we are looking at the world from a different lens. We are looking at our sphere of influence being first on our own self, and then our family, and then our community, and then as we grow and move forward. David, I want to thank you so much, sir, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I need to stay in touch with you because I need to pick much more of your brain than you have given to us in the last hour or so. But I want to thank you first for coming to Threads of Enlightenment and sharing with us, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, I just would like to encourage people, for any connection to my books or to my music, my website has the connections to all. You can listen to some music there, but my website is realuproject.com, realuproject.com. And my music can always be found on Spotify and Apple Music at David H. Green. And I hope you can enjoy them and be inspired. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. And you guys, I mentioned before, his books and the music. Get everything that you can of David and support him and learn from him. As you support him, you're actually learning, you're drinking from his knowledge, what he has gained from his studies. And he was led that in a book form by which those the anointing is still there, the power, the juice, the good stuff is still there, that is able to leap from those pages, those words, into your being and to change you. David, again, thank you so much.
My pleasure.